Hey, how's it going, YouTube? I'm back in the video, and today I'm going to be doing a 2021 NBA mock draft. Now that the lottery is over, we have the actual order, and I'm going to be going through the teams that I personally think are what they're going to do, how this draft's going to go. And this isn't really what I think is going to happen. It's more of what I would do if I was a GM of these teams and who I would draft in these situations. And I've personally put in a ton of work for this mock draft, so I'm pretty confident in all of these picks and all of these players that I think are good because I've put a ton of work. Last year I got Tyrese Halliburton right, I got Isaiah Stewart right, I got Saddiq Bey right, I got a lot of players right that not a lot of people thought would be as good as they were, and they ended up being pretty good. So I feel pretty confident that I do know what I'm talking about, because I also said Denny Avengito wouldn't be that good, and he wasn't that good. And I mean, yeah, he had a decent rookie season, but he still wasn't anywhere near what people wanted him to be. So I for sure think I do have a fairly good grasp of who's going to be good and who's not. Now, obviously, I'm not going to be 100% correct and everything, but I do think I will be at least 80% correct on who I think is going to be good and who I think is going to be bad. So hopefully I can do the same thing this year, and hopefully it can be an interesting video. So if you are interested in that, I'm going to be getting through every team in the lottery. So if your team's in the lottery, I will be talking about them. But I do hope you like the video, and at any point, if you do like the video enough, hit the like button and subscribe button. That would mean the world to me. But without further ado, without rambling on too much, let's get right into this video. Alright, so with the number 1 overall pick, we have the Detroit Pistons, and I think if I have them picking anyone else but this guy, they would riot. So I have them picking Cade Cunningham, and to me, Cade Cunningham is in a tier with only one other player. Like Cade Cunningham and this other player that I will be getting into with the next pick, I personally think are the 1A, 1B situation. I don't know who's going to be better, but I know they're both going to be star level players in the NBA, assuming they stay healthy. And the reason I have Detroit picking Cade Cunningham is because he will most probably definitely be a star, like I said earlier, assuming he stays healthy, and he would be a great two-way player, which this team does need. They need elite defensive players, and they need elite scoring, and that's what Cade Cunningham is going to give you. Also, he can guard the 1, 2, and 3 positions, which means small forward through point guard. Maybe he could guard power forwards, but I think it would start getting a little shady at that point. I definitely don't think he's big enough to guard centers, but he can probably guard 1 through 4, and it would be very, very interesting to watch him be able to switch on defense. And when you have that kind of versatility on both ways, it is very, very fun to watch, and that is just building more and more of a star level player as you go into the league, because he has the tools to do so much and kill and hurt you in so many ways. And then also, he's going to be a very good punch with Killian Hayes, because I mean, look how good their perimeter defense is going to be, as they're going to have a trio that consists of Killian Hayes, who's a 6'5" point guard and a great perimeter defender when he's healthy, Saddiq Bey at shooting guard, who will be a 6'7" shooting guard and is a very lengthy player, and although not the best defender, is a solid two-way player and is going to get better defensively as well. So Saddiq Bey is going to be a very good, that's already a good 1-2 punch. Then you add Cade Cunningham, who's an elite two-way talent, who's going to be able to play very smart defense, very hard defense, while also getting you a bucket on the other end. This defensive team, at least on the perimeter, is going to be very, very fun to watch. And then also their defense isn't going to be that bad in the paint, because they're going to have Isaiah Stewart, who, although I think he's pretty much at his ceiling, like this is where I think Isaiah Stewart's going to be, that's what I said going into the draft, that he will be a very solid rebounder, strong guy, and a paint presence, and we saw that with him averaging 1.3 blocks per game last year when he mainly was coming off the bench for the entire season. So it is going to be very fun to watch someone like Isaiah Stewart, Cade Cunningham, Killian Hayes, and Saddiq Bey all play together, because those are all elite defensive guys. Well, not elite, but like 3 of those 4 guys are elite defensive guys in their own respective positions. And I mean, there could be one of the better defensive teams in the entire NBA going into next season. The only problem is going to be their bench, and they're going to be able to round out their bench through free agency and through future drafts as well. So as their time goes on, Detroit's just going to keep getting better and better as their young talent develops and their bench keeps getting stronger. So it's going to be very fun to watch this Detroit team develop, and they could be one of the more interesting teams going into the future. And that's the first time you could say that about any Detroit sports team franchise in a very long time. But now with the number 2 overall pick, we have the Houston Rockets selecting Jalen Green. And Jalen Green, to me, is the 1B in this draft. I think him and Cade Cunningham are the only 2 in this tier. They're in a tier of their own, and they're both going to be very, very good players. He is a very close second, if not, I mean, he's a very close second to most people. And in my opinion, he is the best player in this draft. He is going to be a great shooting guard to pair with Kevin Porter Jr. and Christian Wood in this draft. And I mean, he's going to be a very, very very fun player to watch. And also Jae'Sean Tate will be able to play with him very well as well. So it is going to be very fun to watch how they use all this young talent and how much Jalen Green is going to help, because Jalen Green, in my opinion, is probably the best scorer in this entire draft right now, and he also has immense defensive potential due to his size and athleticism, and he already showed that he could be a solid defender. So I think for sure Jalen Green is going to be one of the most impactful rookies in day one. He's going to be a very confident scorer. He's already has that pro experience playing in the G League, so it's going to be very fun to watch as Jalen Green comes in and tries to help the Houston Rockets. And I think potentially, like I said earlier, Jalen Green could be the best player in this entire draft. So I think the Houston Rockets could be getting an absolute beast with the number 2 overall pick. And now moving on to the 3rd pick, which is the Cleveland Cavaliers, I have them selecting Evan Mobley. Now the reason I have them selecting Evan Mobley, because although I have him on a tier right under Cade Cunningham and Jalen Green, I still think Evan Mobley has potential to be an absolute star in this league, as Cleveland is in a unique situation where if they drafted Evan Mobley, they could try a very interesting experiment with a very big lineup. Now this experiment could either work very well for them or just not work that well, but Evan Mobley could still fit in any situation, in my opinion. In that experiment they could run would be having Garland at the starting point guard, Sexton shooting guard, Okoro small forward, but then Jared Allen at the power forward position and Evan Mobley at the center position. And the reason I say this could work is because they're the first ever team to really have 2 very athletic bigs who aren't incompetent in the perimeter and can also be very good run and gun type players. And if you can have a high-paced offense and just a high-paced like motive to your game, well then that's going to be very hard to deal with when you have 2 damn near 7-footers on the roster that can still run and gun, play defense on the perimeter, and also protect the paint and grab boards. That is going to be very hard to deal with, especially for the teams that play small ball. And the reason I say this could work is because Evan Mobley isn't just a center that can grab rebounds, play defense, protect the rim. He can also handle the ball pretty well and is also pretty good at when it comes to floor spacing. He's obviously going to need to work on it and develop a little bit more, but the potential to be a very good floor spacer and the next like unicorn type player is definitely there. And I think Cleveland, if they were to run this experiment, which I don't think they will, but I mean, still, although I don't know for sure if it would work, I think there is a chance that it could be very successful and very hard to deal with. But I don't think they're going to do it. And another reason I have them picking Evan Mobley is because that's going to make it so much easier to just get rid of Kevin Love. Because I mean, not get rid of him, get rid of him for less, and they're not going to have to value his trade as much, which means they would get off his contract. But right now, he's one of their best players, so trading him for nothing would be a very bad plan. But if you draft Evan Mobley, now he's on your bench, and then boom, now you can get rid of Kevin Love for a little bit less, and it won't hurt your team nearly as much. Now with the number 4 overall pick, I have the Toronto Raptors selecting Jalen Suggs. Now I'm not as high on Jalen Suggs as many people are. Some people like love him or saying he's the best, and I just don't think he's the best in this draft class, not even close. But I still like him. Like I have him going 4th overall. It's pretty damn good. But I'm not in love with him like some people are. But I still think he would be a very good fit for Toronto because I mean Suggs being a very good playmaking and defensive minded point guard could be a great replacement for Kyle Lowry if he was to leave this offseason from Toronto, which there have been many rumors about him potentially leaving Toronto. So Jalen Suggs could serve as a very good player and a very good replacement with Kyle Lowry, and this team could very much be a playoff team next season, at least a playoff caliber team, because they would still have now Jalen Suggs, Fred VanVleet, Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby. They still have some very nice players on that roster, and I do think Jalen Suggs would fit very well, but I don't think Jalen Suggs will ever be a superstar. He might be an all-star level player, but I see more of an RJ Barrett type player from Jalen Suggs, and it's still number 4 overall is very good, but I don't think Jalen Suggs is going to be a superstar or anything like that. And now going over to the 5th overall pick, I have the Orlando Magic selecting Chris Duarte. I know I pretty much butchered that name, but he's a small forward out of Oregon who's a very good 3-and-D player, maybe one of the better 3-and-D prospects that isn't named Jalen Green or Cade Cunningham, and I think Chris Duarte has a very good chance to be an elite 3-point shooter and just an elite scorer all around, while still being a very good defensive player. Now, although I do think there are players better than him at this point, and the Magic could also look at someone with higher upside like Jonathan Kuminga here. I'm just not very high on Kuminga, at least not at the 5th overall pick, but I mean, still, I think the Magic would be getting a very solid player, and he's one of those players who doesn't need the ball in his hand to score and get open and be effective. He can affect the game defensively, but he can also affect the game with just spotting up and stuff. But if he does have the ball in his hand, he can move very well and will be a very good player, and I do do think he will be a day one starter for this team over someone like Dwayne Bacon, and that would be very solid. That would now give you Cole Anthony, another young guy, another weapon to pass to, and everything like that, and they would just be adding to their already very young core. And I think for sure the Magic would benefit from having Chris on their team, because they do need defense and scoring. They're one of the worst teams in both categories last year, and he would provide both of those at a very solid level, and I think he would help them quite a bit with the 5th overall pick. But now with the 6th overall pick, we have the Oklahoma City Thunder selecting Jonathan Kuminga. Now, Kuminga, although is an elite defender and has elite athleticism, I don't like him that much as a player because his offense needs a ton of development. I think he's like 2 years away from being 2 years away type player, because defensively he may already be there, but that even needs some polishing up. But I think he will come into the NBA as a very solid defender and a very good athlete with a very high motor, but unfortunately, I don't think he's going to be there offensively for a while, and that's why I have them dropping to the 6th pick, because a lot of people have him in their top 5, and I just don't like Jonathan Kuminga's offensive game nearly enough to say that he's going in the top 5. This is even kind of high. I just think he kind of fits with OKC, because he will give them a small forward, which they do need. He helps their weakest position, and if they are able to develop his offense, he could be a very, very good player. But I just personally can't see his offensive game developing fast enough for him to be worth a very high overall pick. So I think he's more of a developmental type player, hope for the best. And if you do hit on him, well then he is going to be very solid for you and maybe even an all-star level player. But if he doesn't develop his offensive game, he'll pretty much be another Andre Robertson in my opinion. But now with the number 7 overall pick, I have the Golden State Warriors selecting Jalen Johnson. Now, although a lot of people aren't exactly ecstatic about Jalen Johnson, I am. I love Jalen Johnson. I think he's going to be one of the more underrated players in this draft, and I think he could potentially be the steal of this draft. And him going to Golden State could be very, very scary for any team because of how good I think Jalen Johnson's going to be. And also, with Kelly Oubre Jr. being a unrestricted free agent, there's a chance that he leaves the Golden State Warriors, and he could be an instant replacement, as he is a good shot creator, has great shooting potential, and he's also a very good defender in my opinion, and has tons and tons of upside, and he can guard the 1 through the 4 positions. So I think for sure with his versatility to switch, with his versatility to be able to make shots, be a shot creator, do pretty much everything on the court, and also has very good size in my opinion, I think for sure he's going to be one of the most valuable and one of the most underrated players in this draft, and I think he could potentially one day be the steal of this draft class, and he might even have star potential. So I am very high on Jalen Johnson, and I think he is going to be very, very good for this Golden State team if they are able to get him with the 7th overall pick. And now moving along to the 8th overall pick, I have the Orlando Magic selecting Scottie Barnes. Now, Scottie Barnes, in my opinion, is pretty much the next Draymond Green, like maybe a more athletic Draymond Green with a little bit higher upside, which is still a very good pick at the 8th overall pick. I mean, but he's not there yet. He's going to have to develop his passing and his playmaking. He's going to have to develop a lot more offensively to get to where Draymond was at in his prime. But defensively and his motor-wise, he reminds me straight like Draymond Green, and I think for sure he could be that next type player that is very valuable to a team when they're trying to win games, because he's going to keep the glue together and he doesn't need the ball in his hand to impact the game, and those type of players on a very young team like the Orlando Magic could be extremely valuable for the Orlando Magic here with the 8th overall pick. Now with the 9th overall pick, I have the Sacramento Kings going with Kai Jones. Kai Jones is a player who can pretty much do all the things that a normal big and center can do, but he can also freaking do so much other, and he's also so much more athletic than a normal center is. That is very interesting. He's a 6'11", 218 pounds, but in my opinion, a pretty much freak athlete. Like, he is a very, very solid guy, and he's also very good in transition, which a lot of centers aren't the best transition players, but he is a very, very solid transition player. And also, if he develops his 3 a little bit more, he could also be a good floor spacer for any team. So if you have a freak athlete guy at 6'11" who can spread the floor and plus protect the rim and grab rebounds, well, you can't ask much more from anybody, and I think Kai Jones is going to be a very solid player for years to come in the NBA. Now, whether that's with Sacramento or with someone else, I don't know, but Kai Jones I'm pretty high on, not with a star level player, but I do think Kai Jones could be an extremely high valued role player for any team going into the future. And now with the number 10 overall pick, I have the New Orleans Pelicans selecting Davion Mitchell. Now, Davion Mitchell is one of those players that I'm pretty high on, that some people are kind of not high on, but other people are very high on. So he's kind of one of those questionable prospects, but in my opinion, he will be a very good player in this league, especially for the Pelicans, who desperately need a shooting guard. They desperately need more three-point shooting, and they desperately need more defense, and that is something Davion Mitchell brings in everything. He's pretty much everything the New Orleans Pelicans need. He's a shooting guard with good size, very athletic, very skilled, can also shoot the three-pointer at a very high efficiency rating, and is also a very solid defender. So if we can get a two-way player like that alongside Lonzo Ball with Brandon Ingram and small forward and all that, I think Davion Mitchell could be a huge contributor very early on for the New Orleans Pelicans, because with him being a shooting guard and with how bad Eric Bledsoe was last year, it wouldn't surprise me if he started over Eric Bledsoe going into next season. But now with the number 11 overall pick, I have the Charlotte Hornets selecting Corey Kispert. Now, Corey Kispert is maybe the best three-point shooter in the entire draft class. And I mean, with him being with LaMelo Ball to help pass him in the shooter's pocket every time, pass him open, find him in very hard, difficult situations that other people won't, I think Corey Kispert would benefit a ton from playing with someone like LaMelo, and LaMelo would benefit a ton playing with someone like Corey Kispert, as he would provide much-needed floor spacing, and even more attention would have to be taken away from LaMelo to help guard Corey Kispert, because he's one of those guys that you just cannot help off of, or he will kill you from the three-point line. So you have to stay on him. You can't help off of him, or he will kill you. And LaMelo Ball will also find him every time. If you help off of him, LaMelo is going to make that pass. He's just that good of a playmaker. So I think Kispert is a very good fit here with the 11th overall pick with the Charlotte Hornets. And now with the 12th overall pick, I have the San Antonio Spurs selecting Isaiah Jackson. Now, Isaiah Jackson is pretty much my Isaiah Stewart from last year, but now Isaiah Jackson is pretty much, he is what he is. He's going to be a very solid rim protector, a very strong player, and a very solid rebounder. He's going to do probably around 10 points per game, always be a very solid either backup or a very solid starting player. He's never going to be too great, but he's never going to be bad either. He's going to be one of those very safe picks, very solid picks, and I think the Spurs would be getting a very solid player in Isaiah Jackson, who can also play center and maybe even replace Jakob Poeltl if they want that to happen, or it could have him coming off the bench for very solid bench minutes, and he would be very good in anyone's rotation. He's one of those guys that would pretty much fit any situation. And now in the home stretch with the 13th overall pick, we have the Indiana Pacers selecting Franz Wagner. Now, Franz Wagner, although no star potential in my opinion, won't be a star, I also don't think he will be a bust. I think he'll just be a very solid role player his whole career. He'll add depth to any roster, and he'll also add depth to the Indiana Pacers' weakest small forward position, which is, well, small forward. So I think for sure, if he doesn't even start, at least he'll be a good bench player for them, and he'll be a very solid role player for years to come. I don't think he will be a star. He's not that interesting, to be honest. He's just pretty much a role player. And now with the 14th and final pick of the NBA draft lottery, we have the Golden State Warriors selecting once again, and I have them selecting Tre Mann. Now, Tre Mann, in my opinion, could be an elite scorer off their bench and could be the steal of a draft as well, as I'm very high on Tre Mann, and not a lot of people are, but he's a 6'5" point guard who has a very good handle with the ball, can score at all three levels, is very quick, and has defensive potential. So I think for sure Tre Mann could be a steal of the draft, and would be a very interesting prospect to be on Golden State. Because yes, they already have Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, but Tre Mann coming off their bench alongside Jalen Johnson, either starting or also coming off the bench, would be a very good young duo. And if they got both these players, I think they could potentially have one of the best drafts in the entire league if they were able to get these two players, because I think they could both have steal of the draft potential. So if you get both the steals of the draft, well, you're going to have one of the best drafts. And last year I said Detroit was going to have the best draft, and they did have one of the best drafts, getting Sadiq Bey and Isaiah Stewart, and we still don't know what Killian Hayes is when he has a fully healthy season. Hopefully we get to see that. And I was very high on Killian Hayes, but he got injured, so I couldn't really tell. So yeah, that's the entire mock draft. Tell me if you agree, do you disagree, or want to hear our thoughts in the comment section below. And I hope you have a blessed day, so you need to have a blessed day. All glory to God. See you in the next video. Goodbye. Boo.